morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. And my guest today is Ralph Epperson. He is a historian, the author, a lecturer who's been researching the conspiratorial view of history for 50 years. Actually, Ralph, you've been doing this longer than I've been doing it. That's son of a gun.
Okay, I started back in 1962, Clay, with the first book that I read called None Dare Call It Treason, and that book got me angry, and that started my walk into over 1,000 books now.
Now, you're a graduate of the University of Arizona, but it says on your website you admit you've learned more since graduation than was taught to you in college.
Yes, they never explained to me that there were people who actually believed there was a conspiracy. In fact, it's not a belief anymore. It's real. This thing is real. And so they claim that we are conspiracy theorists, and I say that's not true. I'm a conspiracy realist. I know it's real.
This, you've got information about World War II, about the Japanese attack, and matter of fact, Roosevelt said it was all a surprise, kind of like 9/11, and yet. The Hilo Tribune Herald had a story that Japan may strike over the weekend. I mean, you better not go to the ball game today. Japan's supposed to strike, but we didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, well, see, that newspaper you mentioned was published in Hawaii, and it was the weekend before. It was the Sunday, November 30th, 1941 edition of the newspaper, and the attack occurred the following Sunday, December 7th. So here's the newspaper saying Japan may strike over the weekend, meaning next weekend, and they did. So the question is, how come the newspaper knew and Roosevelt didn't?
I've got it right up here, Ralph, and the reason is this kind of goes under the term synchronicity. When I unpacked, I found a picture here that was given to me by a man named Eden Rainey, who was there at Pearl Harbor. And before the attack, they ordered his squad to turn in all their ammo.
Yes, that's true.
His squad didn't do that. And this picture shows the location of all the ships. Eden Rainey's squad shot down one of the Japanese fighters. Eden Rainey went up onto the roof of the barracks and pulled his body out and found a map that had the location of every ship, with one exception. The aircraft carrier that did not come in. The Arizona was docked where that aircraft carrier Kitty Hawk was supposed to be, but the admiral didn't bring it in because obviously he knew there was going to be an attack.
Well, the people that planned that, meaning the president of the United States, not the admirals, the president knew that the aircraft carriers would be very important in a battle that they were envisioning with Japan over a huge ocean and small islands. So that they were going to have to fight it with airplanes, and the way to do that is they'd need 3 aircraft carriers in that area to survive. And so they were all out to sea, but the battleships were not. And they were not only in port, but they were tied up in a row. 7 of the 8, I think it was, were lined up in a row. So if you start on the south end, you could just keep dropping bombs and pick them up as you go north, and that's what they did. So, but there's another story that I learned here in Tucson from a survivor who said that the Saturday before the attack of December 7th, there was an inspection, a naval inspection, and all of the battleships were inspected, and when an inspector comes on board, they open up the bulkhead door so that the admiral or whoever it is doing the inspection can walk unimpeded. You don't have to stop every little short distance to uncurl, they tighten up or loosen up that door so they can open it and then walk through and then shut it again. So all the doors and all the battleships were open on the set, which means that there was a torpedo attack and they punctured a hole in the hull. the ship would fill with water very quickly. I wonder, isn't that an interesting coincidence? Just a little area of neglect, I'm sure. No one wondered why or challenged it, so that's the way it is.
Ralph, that was our last real war. We haven't had a war since. Not one that's been declared by Congress. Everything has been police actions, from Korea to the non-existent Gulf of Tonkin incident in Vietnam, to the war with Iraq over something that Iraq had nothing to do with, 9/11.
Well, I put out a 4-hour DVD called Vietnam, America's Betrayal and Treason, and it links the sinking of the Lusitania to get us into World War I. Our government planned that event. Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill arranged for the sinking of the Lusitania to get us into World War I, because Americans were on board. The Pearl Harbor attack, as we were discussing that, and the Gulf of Tonkin event, as you correctly pointed out, did not happen. But America has a strategy that says, we're not going to war unless we're attacked. So that's why our government planned the 9/11 attack. It was a planned event by our government. Why? So that we could go to war in Afghanistan and Iraq. So our government followed the same plan at least 3 times before: the sinking of Lusitania, the Pearl Harbor attack, and the Gulf of Tonkin event that never happened to
Well,
get us into Vietnam.
But all of these incidents are well documented, and but nobody wants to look at it. I mean, the project for the new American century stated what we needed. What the United States needed was a new attack, and the Northwoods incident. This was during Kennedy's administration, I guess, and he overruled it. They wanted to do they wanted to use planes and pretend there was hijackers on it to give us a reason to go to war with Cuba.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying this, Clay. This government has a habit of doing things repetitiously, and that's exactly what they've done. There were no terrorists on board any of those airplanes on the 9/11. In fact, there was 3 airplanes. Well, 2 of those airplanes. One was the attack at the Pentagon was not an airplane. It was a missile, a cruise missile, painted to look like an American Airlines airplane. And a small, in fact, eyewitnesses said it was a small commuter jet. They had never seen a cruise missile, I guess. And it was a small commuter jet. No, it had to be a 767. It's impossible. The 767 couldn't have done what it did, and certainly it would have done more damage to the building than it did. So it was a cruise missile. So we had to have, there was no terrorists on board any of those airplanes. And Flight 93 did not crash in Shanksville, or where it is in Pennsylvania. The coroner went there to, from the, I guess, the city or the county, to start working with the deceased, and he found no bodies, no airplanes, no jet engines, no wheels, no luggage, no seats, nothing.
So what happened to Flight 93? I assumed that maybe some fighter pilot who